Hello and a happy new year to you all. My name's Melanie and welcome back to my channel. Thank you for all the emails that I got over the Christmas holidays, and I want to start addressing some of the questions that you've been asking me through these videos. So this video I want to talk about why some of us can find ourselves repeatedly getting back into codependent relationships. And it's not bad enough that at one time you found yourself in a relationship in which you lost yourself, but to continually find yourself in relationships in which you find it hard to say no, you find it hard to establish healthy boundaries, you find it hard to prioritize actually making sure that your time and your space and your energy is respected. Instead, you're too willing to give it away to others. So I wanted to make this video to help address these concerns and why you could be finding yourself in continuous codependent relationship after another. So when I'm talking about codependent relationships, I'm referring to the kind of relationships in which you totally lose yourself, you lose your sense of self, you lose focus of your own goals and what's important to you. Instead, it's all about the other person. It becomes a very addictive relationship, becomes very enmeshed, and we just lose touch of what's important to us, to the people that's important to us. And it becomes like two people that are like holding each other and balancing against each other, thinking, don't move, otherwise I'll fall. It's that kind of feeling in a enmeshed codependent relationship. And often people who are asking me, am I codependent? These are the kinds of people who are very much people pleasers, they're peacemakers, they're caregivers. And as such, it means that we find ourselves often in codependent relationships, and often with people who take advantage of us and our willingness to put our boundaries down. In every healthy relationship, both parties need to establish healthy boundaries. Yes, I want to spend time with you and honor the relationship, but I also need to spend time with myself and honor myself and my needs. However, in a dysfunctional relationship, you find that these needs go to one side in the service of another. And this other person may be doing the same, or this person may be taking advantage of this, enjoying the fact that you're putting your boundaries to one side in order to help the other. And this is where we can leave the door wide open for people with personality disorders to swoop right in. I see a lot of people getting frustrated as to why they keep finding themselves time and time again in relationships in which they lose their sense of self, in which they find it hard to say no to the other person, in which they're putting their needs aside all the time in order to placate and to make the other person happy. And when this relationship ends and they think, I'm never doing this again, I'm so angry that this happened, and then somehow end up slipping into a similar kind of relationship, even if it's not a romantic one, whether it's at work, whether it's with a friend. Sometimes we slip back into relationships like this, sometimes with the same person as well. And to others, to outsiders, this might be such a crazy thing. Why are you going back there? Why do you keep finding yourself in these relationships? And often the feelings of shame for doing this, for being back in this position again, it makes it harder to do this inner work. And as such, often we become unconscious as to why we were doing this in the first place. Why do we keep finding ourselves in these codependent relationships? So the question I want to ask you is, if you can resonate, if you find yourself continually in relationships which become codependent, relationships in which you end up placating the others all the time, you're doing things to make them happy, you're in caretaker, people pleaser mode. If you can relate, I want to ask you one question, and that is, there someone in the past who punished you when you try to establish boundaries? When you try to individuate, when you saying this is me when you were growing up, was there someone in your family, perhaps a sibling, mum, dad, was there someone in your family who punished you when you were trying to individuate, when you were trying to set and establish healthy boundaries for yourself? Now, by punish, I mean shaming you, criticizing you, mocking you, chastising you. Often, if we have a parent who is highly narcissistic parents who just don't want their kids to individuate, to separate, they want to have a feeling of power and control over them, and they also don't want them to have their own autonomy. And as such, they will punish you for when you want to establish healthy boundaries for yourself. From mocking you, from criticizing you. Silent treatment is also an effective one, making you feel guilty. As children, we look up to our parents. We think they're gods. We think they can do no wrong. We look at them with adoring eyes, and the highly narcissistic parent is just lapping it up. He or she loves it. And then as you get older, as a child, the process of individuation, the strive for autonomy, it starts by us thinking, actually, no, these are my beliefs, and no, I don't agree with you, and I actually want to separate from mother or father. And the narcissistic parent may become frustrated and angry that this supply source is wanting to separate this extension, this mini version of them. They don't see you as having your own autonomous needs, but actually you're an extension of that parent. They get angry. Now, when this happens as a child, we learn to submit. If we have a parent who is punishing us for whatever reason, for establishing our own boundaries, for wanting to individuate, the parent is punishing us for this. We don't really understand what's going on with the parent. We would think, we must have done something wrong. I must be bad. I've done something wrong. There's a sense of shame and of guilt of not being in relationship with mother or father. And so we will adapt our behavior. We'll submit. We'll fawn. We are also going to find it harder to hold healthy boundaries in a relationship if we have a parent who themselves were a people pleaser, who themselves didn't know how to model and hold healthy boundaries. We're very observant as kids, and we tolerate what we see when we're growing up. So if we have a parent who's very much the people pleaser and likes to placate and fawn and make the other one happy, and especially if there's also another parent who's very highly narcissistic and controlling, it's no wonder that as a child growing up in this kind of environment, that you will be tested every time you try and set yourself a healthy boundary and authentically express yourself as being different to the parent and not actually agreeing to and doing what the parent wants, and then witnessing another family member just fawning and placating to calm the other person down. So can you see how this will affect you growing up as an adult? We've learnt unconsciously that in stressful situations, that when the fight or flight response kicks in, submission, fawning is one of these. That when you're dealing with someone who is angry, someone who's being demanding, and then we learned in the past that to actually submit, to placate, to look after the other, to do what they say, to keep the peace. We've learned that this is the safest thing to do. And as such, we're reenacting our past. So if you don't realize that this is a pattern for you, we will keep acting it out, and it will always be seen in personal, intimate relationships. Don't underestimate the power of the unconscious. We are ruled by the unconscious, and whatever we're resisting, whatever we haven't come to terms with within our psyches, whatever we're not at peace with, it will persist. It will keep showing up. We will end up reenacting it. So we need to become aware. We need to become aware of these processes that are happening within us. So it all starts in childhood. Whatever is modeled for us, we learn to tolerate and accept in our future intimate relationships. Now, we can change this. And the first step to change is awareness, to be aware of our tendencies to do this. So if you can resonate with this, if you do find yourself tolerating behaviors that you really shouldn't be in relationships, people pleasing way too much, if you're finding it really hard to say no in relationships, if you become way too much of a caretaker or a mummy figure for your partner, have a think. Has this happened in the past? Was I shamed? Was I mocked? Was I criticized? Was I punished in any way for wanting to establish boundaries for myself? Is this a particular person? How often did it happen? What was my response? Asking yourself these questions are going to give you some sort of clarity that when practiced alongside with mindfulness, it helps us to pause in each situation And in stressful situation, this is what triggers our fight or flight response. This is when unconsciously we can slip into people pleasing mode and allowing behaviors that we really shouldn't be allowing. And it gives us a chance to pause and to think, is the past happening again? I personally like to write this all on paper, by the way. Like, I used to suffer from quite bad insomnia, and I find that free writing is actually really beneficial. Writing, I find, is very cathartic. And if you resonate with what I'm talking about here, and if you just want to free write about any times, poignant times, very significant times in which you were shamed, you were criticized for establishing boundaries, get it all out on paper. Autonomy is a path forward to discover our sense of self and boundaries that weren't permitted to develop in our teens. If you had this some sort of arrested development, if this wasn't allowed, if you weren't allowed to develop boundaries, then it's not surprising as an adult you tolerate relationships in which there are no boundaries. And it's okay. It's okay to admit that you've been in these kind of relationships. It's a response to trauma as a child growing up, to put our boundaries to one side. So please don't beat yourself up about it. And part of the healing process is realizing that you do this and to start making sense of why you do this. Okay, that's it for now. As always, I'd love to hear your thoughts. Please leave them in the comments below. And if you're struggling and you need my help, my counseling services, don't be shy. Send me an email, melaniePrsvp@gmail.com. And awesome, I've hit over 1,000 subs, so ta for that. That's awesome. I shall be doing a live soon at some point. I don't know when, maybe next week. But until then, have a great week and take care for now. Bye-bye.